White Rocket Entertainment podcast number 975. Hello and welcome to what we are cleverly calling American Odyssey, the White Rocket World Cup miniseries of 2026, where I am Van Allen Plexico, your host, as you will find out here as soon as I turn this off for a second. There. I am your host, Van Allen Plexico, and I'm joined for this new mini-series that we're doing about favorite World Cup memories of the last 30 years or so, more than that, which I don't want to think about how many more. I'm Van Allen Plexico, joined by David Wright of American Soccer Quick Kicks. And how are you doing today, David?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. Getting excited about this World Cup, our second one being held here in the United States. And I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Let's go.
I was just looking at how the vote went to get to the U.S., to North America for 2026. And it's so funny how, the U.S. has been trying to get it back for the last several times. And to think that we got overwhelmingly outvoted by Qatar is just, it's still, I mean, if, I always say that there's corrupt international organizations that we love anyway, and certainly along with the FIA and Formula One, FIFA is right up there. They're amazing how and the IOC, right? The holy trinity of international corrupt organizations, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee,
yes,
FIA, and FIFA. The three of them just cannot outdo each other.
Yeah, FIFA obviously very political. There's this ideal that they want to grow the sport in all the parts of the world, and that sounds great. So let's just assume that's what they were doing in Qatar, and eventually, get us back around to North America. I think they try to alternate with, mixing. They don't want everything to just be Europe and South America like maybe it was for a while. So, spread the love a little bit, and let's just assume that they're all being altruistic and honest and above board with everything.
They've been to Asia once and Africa once, and now they're back to North America. And I think they're going to be in Saudi Arabia next time, which is just like, once again, they're building these giant stadiums for somebody. Yep.
Yeah,
I'm not sure for who, other than the people at one time. It's like hosting the Olympics 10 times in 1 year, I guess. But okay, so well, anyway, we'll talk about that as we go along. We'll get to the future. But the plan here is we're going to go back and look at 2 World Cups per episode. Okay. And today, and we're starting when the U.S. started back, right? We know the U.S. was in it from like 1930 to 1950 and did some cool things, but we're going to really start with the ones in our lifetime that we have personal memories for the most part of. And sort of my mission statement to David was, we're going to try to do 2 things, right? We're going to look at the actual World Cups, including how the United States fared in those World Cups, sort of from a factual overhead basis. And then we're going to look personally at what you and I remember about them, both in terms of the sporting event and just what were we doing at the time, a kind of a personal look. So, and kind of just break it down in both ways. So
I'm really excited about it. One of the things I love about soccer is that you got 2 sides to it. You got the club side, the professional club side, and then you got the international competitions. And I know that you find international competitions like in basketball or baseball, whatever, but it's just not. There's just not anything else like it. International soccer. I jumped in here in 1990. And have kind of been addicted to it ever since. And it's, to me, I live with these 4-year cycles. You can keep the Olympics, just give me the World Cup. And I have watched every one of these starting in 1990. So to be able to take this opportunity to kind of look back over them and kind of track what the U.S. has done, we've had some ups and downs. I'm really excited to get into this series. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so we don't have as much to say about 1990, I don't think, from a personal standpoint, and from the U.S. accomplishing very much. But we're going to start there. And so it was Italia 90, and I'm going to go ahead and open up another page for the World Cup itself in case there's anything we want to look up about it. But Italia 1990 Italy was so excited to get the World Cup, and they thought that meant they would finally win their fourth one, because they won back twice in the 30s when Mussolini told them win or die, and they didn't die, so they won. And then they won in 82, right? With Palarossi. And then so 1990, they think this is their big chance to get their fourth, and it will not be their fourth. Oh, by the way, before we talk about it, I want to note because I'm going to forget, that I'm wearing this vintage reproduction of the 1994, nice. Which I think this is the 1994 USA jersey. I even got number 94 on it. Nice. And I think this is, to me, the number one most iconic USA jersey ever. You could make an argument for the bomb pop, or for some of the sort of just plain white polo shirt looking ones that are kind of the way they default to every other time. But when Adidas said wrap them in the flag and use stonewashed denim, I think the ultimate image is this, with Alexi Lawless with his beard and his big hair wearing this jersey.
100%. Yeah. I'm a little, I don't know what the word is, dismayed, I suppose, that the U.S. doesn't have like an iconic kit design that you can kind of count on being the same through the years. Like you think of Argentina, right? Or Brazil, teams like that who keep the same basic look with Italy. Just small variations. We seem to come out different every single time, but that one you're wearing right there, the denim look from 94, I think that is the one that is the most iconic and, kind of just the most American in spirit. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that one. I'm jealous.
We are sort of the Oregon Ducks of international soccer.
The Oregon Ducks of international soccer. Yeah, I can see that.
If you can't be like Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or somebody like that, or Georgia, whoever, with one iconic look, then the other way is to be a completely different thing every single
yes.
time. That's what that's the road we've kind of walked. I know to me, the U.S. jersey is white, right? Not blue, not red. It's white. That just seems to be the color we've always used, and it should be white with just a little red and blue trim on it. And that would be our Brazil or Argentina, but we don't do that. Like you said, we keep changing it for some reason. So I do like that the 2026 jersey is going to be kind of like the other version of this year, the red and white stripes.
Yeah, if we had the red and white stripes with a good solid blue pair of shorts, I think that could be a pretty good look. I'm looking for, they debuted that recently and I liked it, so I hope we stick with it for a while.
Yeah. All right, so 1990 World Cup in Italy. The U.S. had not been in the World Cup for a while. Tell us what you know about the history of that, of us getting back.
Yeah, so we had played in 1950, and it had been 40 long years of not participating in the World Cup at all. So as far as I'm concerned, 1990 is where the modern history begins. That's our 0 year. It's not much point in looking past that in terms of our U.S. national team program. Why were we gone for so long? Well, we were barely a soccer nation at all. We had the NASL, which is a professional outdoor league that ran officially from like 68 to 84, but it was a rogue league. It was not sanctioned by FIFA. And so it doesn't really count, and it didn't like. I don't believe the players. I better not say this. I don't know for sure, but I think there were sanctions against players that were participating in non-sanctioned leagues like that. So we did not. We barely had a national team program. We did not have players that were playing overseas anywhere. In fact, it was either 83 or 84 that they tried this weird experiment of having Team USA be a team in the NASL league to participate as a league team, but it was our national team just to give them minutes, just to give them games to play. And that league folds. That league goes out of business in 84, and it had just barely hung on with a couple of teams there at the very end. And so in the 80s, like especially after NASL, the only thing you're going to find professional-wise in the United States is indoor soccer, which is not really the same sport. It's more like human pinball. And so we're coming into 1990, And we're essentially a squad of college all-stars and semi-pro players. That's it. And there's just limited opportunity and limited exposure. And for us to be able to reach this tournament, to qualify for this tournament, was absolutely everything. It was the likelihood that we could do that with the state of our program and the players that we had to work with was so small, and yet we did it. Now, these college all-stars, they're including names that you might recognize, like Tony Miola, John Harkes, Tab Ramos, Peter Vermees. These were names these are the pioneers. These were the guys that forged American soccer, that gave us that foundation in the 90s. And it's because they're coming up here in the late 80s and they're doing what seems to be impossible, which is qualifying the United States for the first time in 40 years. We clinched it in 1989 with the match against Trinidad and Tobago when Paul Caligiuri, future MLS player, Paul Caligiuri scored the goal. The shot heard around the world. We win 1-0, and that puts us into the World Cup. And to think that beating a country like Trinidad and Tobago would be an enormous achievement today sounds kind of funny, but in 1989 it was everything because we had not been to the dance in 40 years. So knowing we were going, it was everything. So that got me excited because let me say this: from 86, the previous World Cup, to 1990, in that 4-year span, that is where I discovered soccer. In between 86, I wasn't playing yet. I was hearing about soccer. That's it. But 87, I'm playing soccer. 87, 88, 89, I'm on my varsity squad. And as it happens, I'm taking German in high school. I would go on to take some German in college. And I visited Germany on a spring break trip. So I feel like I got some German culture in me, and I feel like I understand soccer a little bit than most folks around me there where I'm living in Georgia. And to have the World Cup come along and the United States is playing in it and Germany's one of the favorites, I am on board. So this is my first World Cup. It barely registered that it existed in 86, but my whole world was soccer by the time the 1990 World Cup happened. So I was ready for it. I was tuned into TNT listening to Ernie Johnson Jr. give us the play-by-play on all these matches.
Well, it's funny you say, because it's really not fair that to get into the World Cup we had to beat Trinidad and Tobago. It was kind of 2 against 1.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'm just kidding. But honestly, what I discovered, I didn't realize this, was that CONCACAF only got 2 spots in this World Cup, and the other one was taken by Costa Rica. We had to beat Mexico out to get into this World Cup, and we did.
Yeah, we did.
I don't know exactly how, but I'm thinking Mexico must not have been at full fighting strength to be beaten out by that U.S. team, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I can't remember the details there. I'm pretty sure Costa Rica was being managed by Bora Milutinovic, or however you say his last name.
Oh, yeah, who would be our coach.
Who would go on to be our manager in 94.
That's right.
And anyway, yeah, you say we only 2 from CONCACAF were there. Keep in mind, this was at a time when the total field was 24 teams. I think 32 is probably the ideal size, but at this point, we're still at 24. So there's only 2 teams from CONCACAF going to the tournament.
And Bora's Costa Rica team actually made it to the knockout phase. Yes. They got shelled by the Czechs just like we did. We got Czechoslovakia ran over us like a tank in the middle of Prague in the group stage, and then ran over Costa Rica. The total score of those 2 matches was Czechoslovakia 9, the USA and Costa Rica combined 2. But that's all right. They ended up the Czechs ended up losing to West Germany in the round of 8. But you're talking about the personal things. My quick personal story. I don't have a ton of personal story for this one, but it was simply this. This was my senior year in college, my senior year at Auburn. And I was the director of the Model United Nations, and my major was international relations and political science. And so I'm thinking, well, if I'm, about international relations and doing United Nations and doing countries and stuff, oh, this World Cup thing is going on. I probably should be paying attention to that. But it was harder to watch it back then. And I didn't have the way to see it. I don't know what channel it was on in 1990 or whatever, but I didn't see it. But I saw highlights somehow. And the thing that I remember is seeing that the final match, Germany and Argentina, was Germany 1, Argentina 0. Because I remember after our Model UN was over, I took the Germany placard and the Argentina placard, and I put 1 and 0 on the two with Post-its on the two of them and put them up in the office. That was my entire memory of that World Cup, was knowing the U.S. was in it, but not knowing how we did really, and then knowing that Germany beat Argentina. And I remember seeing the highlights of the final, where the whole highlight was Germany kicking a penalty kick. That was it. That was the whole, other than a whole lot of defense. And, you know, when you're having to look to Germany for the optimistic offensive personality, because the Argentinians back then were not like Argentina now, which are a very creative offensive team. Understand, Argentina in 1990 was just foul everybody, win the fight, and hope you also win the score. That was Argentina's approach in 90 after they'd won in 86 with Maradona. And they tried it, and the Germans took it and beat them on a penalty kick.
Yeah, so these games were carried on TNT. I remember that, which was a weird place to find sports at the time. And I don't know. I should have done this research, but I wonder, like, was there a scramble to find somebody to even carry these games after we knew that the U.S. was going to be participating? Because as far as I know, prior to 1990, the World Cups were not carried on television for America. Like, we had no opportunity to watch it. This was our first time to watch it, and I wonder if they scrambled to find a network to do it only after the U.S. qualified. I really don't know. But we did get TNT, and, of course, broadcasters here hadn't figured out yet how to cover the game. The fact that there's no stoppages and it just keeps going, there's no timeouts, caused a problem for for the way we're set up to cover sports and having commercial breaks and having advertising. Like, how can we cover these games with no commercial breaks? What's the business model? What's that going to look like? And they had commercial breaks. They would do commercial breaks. I remember they break away during the game for spots, and I think they would also do some picture-in-picture stuff. Let the game continue while you listen to the commercial over here in the other box. And so that wasn't ideal. The other thing is, I don't think our Sports Center anchors knew how to report on the game. I mean, like you said, if you're only say the game was 1-0, and so you show a clip of the penalty kick. Yeah, but if that's all you're showing, then you don't understand the sport well enough to talk about what the flow of the play is like, what the styles of play were like, how they're united, where are the saves, where are the close calls. Show us some action that kind of demonstrates what was typical of how these teams were interacting through the course of the match. I also still get frustrated when anybody's showing match highlights and all you see is the final touch of the ball going in the net. That's not the play. The play is the whole build up. The assist is usually a lot more exciting than the final shot. It's that through ball to split the defense and get the guy running behind. Show all that, and it seems like most American broadcasters, certainly in 1990, didn't understand the game well enough to present it in its best light. So that's always been frustrating.
I think that there's always been some kind of a weird psychological phenomenon where American sports people want to associate soccer with baseball just because the score lines are often similar, but it really has absolutely nothing in common. Like, you can show a baseball player hitting a home run by showing hitting a home run. Oh, well, then let's show the guy kicking the ball in the goal. It's kind of like him hitting the ball with a bat. But you're right. It's a flowing game, and everything that leads up to that matters. Whereas in baseball, there's not anything leading up to hitting there's the pitch and the hit, but there's no flow leading to that pitch, leading to that hit. So it's it would be much better to show a football play, for example, where there's the snap, the quarterback looks around, the receivers run out, you throw the ball, he catches it, he makes a play, he goes, rather than just showing a guy catching the ball in the end zone, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
For some reason, that's just how they think of it, is baseball, and I've never understood that. I think it's because of the scores, thing. But Anyway, let's see what else we want to talk about. The overly defensive tactics in this World Cup.
Yes.
This still is the lowest scoring World Cup in history.
Yeah.
It's also considered one of the worst in terms of just entertainment value. They added the back pass rule in 1992. Now, I think that's where they could kick it back to the goalkeeper. Am I right about that?
Okay. Yeah. You get a little bit ahead. Yeah. That was introduced after this tournament. Partly it was partly a reaction to the overly defensive tactics for sure. I think they started experimenting in 92. They actually would not introduce that into competition until the 94 World Cup. That's where was fully instituted. Okay. As a matter of fact, they used it in the World Cup. I think it might have been 95 before it became a universal law of the game. But yeah, that's a pretty fundamental change to the rules. Like when I was playing the sport in the 80s, that rule didn't exist. You can kick it back to the goalkeeper and he can pick it up with his hands. Starting as a reaction to the overly defensive tactics in 1990, they started trying to figure it out so that by 94 you had this back pass rule in place. And I think it's a good rule. I think it definitely helps because you want to see the ball in action. You want to keep the flow going.
What does it mean? He can't pick it up?
Right. So if a teammate intentionally plays the ball to his own goalkeeper with his feet, then that goalkeeper can't use his hands. The goalkeeper will have to use his feet to clear the ball or to pass it to somebody else. If you're scrambling on defense and the ball's up in the air and you're able to head it to your own goalkeeper, that's fine. It's the intentional pass with your feet where your goalkeeper can't use his hands.
That's what I thought. Okay. And then the other one, and I think this has had a huge impact, is changing a win. I remember them talking about this at the 94 World Cup, changing a win from 2 points to 3, because what was happening was teams were pretty happy to get a draw because you only lost 1 point. But if you suddenly lose 2 points by having a draw instead of a win, now it puts more of a premium on winning. You got some pretty boring defensive games because teams would just kick the ball around and settle for a 0-0 or a 1-1 draw or something. And so all of a sudden, if you're doing that, you may be 2 points behind somebody else in your group or something. And so it had a really big impact on the group stages of the World Cup, I think, to make a win worth 33% more points.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% right. So from an entertainment perspective, from a fan spectator perspective, you want to see action. You want to see a wide open game, the ball going back and forth, both teams attacking, both teams going for it. However, if you're a head coach, if you're a manager and you're playing for real stakes, you're going to be more conservative than that. And you're going to want to play defensive tactics and so what we were seeing at this time was a very cynical approach to the game, especially for high stakes matches where people were doing that. They were playing defensive shells. They weren't worried about attack really. And what you ended up with were slow, plodding matches, not a lot of excitement, not a lot of attacking opportunities. And it was just boring. And the net result, like you say, was a record low number of goals scored per match when you do the math. And in addition to that, and you touched on it earlier with Argentina's kind of dirty play, is that you also, and this is speaking again to the cynicism of the tactics of the day, just a lot of fouls, just taking people out, and also a lot of faking of fouls to try to deceive the referee.
As Roger Bennett calls it, the dark arts.
The dark arts. And so the games never opened up and got fun and exciting, and it rarely gave us the potential of how awesome this game can be. And unfortunately, that was the state of the sport in 1990 when it was being shown to Americans for the first time. So what you do is you don't have to tweak the rules of the game necessarily. You tweak the competition format, and that comes to giving 3 points for a win instead of 2. And so that just encourages people to go for it more. And so, just like you see in intercontinental competitions, you see two-legged affairs where away goals are weighted more than home goals, is to encourage teams to get out of their defensive shell and open the game up. That's all we want to see. Is we want to see people play it in an entertaining way. So, and yes, you're absolutely right. 1990 is kind of marred by the cynical tactics and the overly conservative tactics, to the point that they instituted these changes: no more back pass and 3 points for a win. And they also did things like, I think it was in 94. These are kind of overlapping now because of the effects of 1990, but they had the fair play flag, where the captains come out before the match and they're carrying the flag just as a symbolic gesture of like, hey, we want to do things right. So that's more of a PR spin, but all of it was out of reaction to kind of like how the 1990 tournament was played.
And Brazil will get the fair play flag award in 1994 after giving one of our players a lobotomy on the field, which still is just shocking.
I think it cracked
Ramos.
Tab Ramos's skull, like in his cheekbone or something.
Yeah, he tried to kill the man.
But give him the fair play flag.
Yeah, absolutely. To wrap up 1990, I did want to mention one other thing. I'm a big Scotland fan, being mostly Scottish. And Scotland has this thing where when they do make the World Cup, which is not all that often, they always have to play Brazil. I looked it up. In 1990, Scotland was there. They were in the same group as Brazil. They come back in 1998, same group as Brazil. They haven't been in the World Cup since 1998, but they're going to be back in 2026. And guess what? Same group as Brazil. Every time my boys have to fight Brazil. It's not fair. You're going to just get an automatic loss. You got to make the most you can out of the other two matches, right? So,
I do want to say, if we're getting ready to wrap up on 1990, I do want to go ahead and
I want to give the U.S. scores, and then
go ahead.
So, so here's how the U.S. did. We actually got no wins, no draws, and 3 losses. So, and this is not going to be the only time that happens, unfortunately. We're going to get to that later. But on June 10th, the U.S. played Czechoslovakia in their first World Cup match in 40 years, and they got crushed by the Czechs. The Czechs bounced them 5-1. 5-1. They regrouped, and 4 days later, they played hosts Italy. And for some reason, when the U.S. plays Italy in the World Cup, we actually do pretty well. Just like England, the two teams we do unexpectedly well against are England and Italy.
Yep.
The teams that we always end up doing not so well against are like Germany and some random Eastern European team. They always kill us.
Or
Poland and Romania and all. Yeah, but 1-0, Italy beats the U.S. and then Austria beat the U.S. 2-1. So we actually hung in there and did fairly well in our last 2 matches, but lose by 1 each. But it wasn't enough to get us out of the first round, obviously. And so we are dead after the first round. So that's all I have about 1990. Your last thoughts about 90?
So my thoughts on that is, doesn't matter. Still a win for the U.S. It still means everything. It means absolutely everything. We lose all 3 of those, and we officially finish in last place of the entire field. We finished 24th out of 24 teams. Does not matter. Why? Because we got there. We got there after 40 years of futility. And think about this. I mean, we're talking about the sport at its highest level on its biggest stage. Think about all the European stars. Like, what a massive scene like European soccer is at its highest levels. And here we are coming in with some college all-stars, and some indoor players who are completely anonymous in the United States. And we're walking into these stadiums surrounded by all of these crowds and all this media attention. It's amazing we scored it all. And when you see the names on this roster, you're going to see a lot of names you recognize if you were still following the team in 94 and a little bit of 98. And there's a lot of future MLS players on this roster too. These are the founding fathers. Okay. These are the pioneers. They broke through the barrier and they didn't get to carry the ball across the goal line, but they put a hole in the line. And so this is where it starts for us. And so the bar's been raised since then, but in 1990, just getting there was the victory.
And how did Mexico do?
Mexico didn't show up.
Exactly. So we got that going for us anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So in Mexico, and keep in mind, Mexico might have not have qualified in '86. I don't know. They were in that tournament because they were the hosts. I don't know the state of Mexican soccer. I don't know if they would have made it in or not. But there you go. Yeah, they're our main rival. So we always got to compare ourselves to how Mexico does.
I don't think they've ever gotten past the second round, have they? Have they gotten to the finals? Maybe they got the quarterfinals once. I don't know, but not much more than that.
I don't think they have since 1990. I really don't. They're kind of known for always getting out at the round of 16. So,
yeah, that's right. All right, so we're about to look at 1994, which is a whole other kettle of fish or a whole different thing. And but let me quickly remind everybody. Support the program on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com. We are White Rocket Reviews. Normally we review with Andy Fix and Laura Schroeder and John Ringer. We've been reviewing, and occasionally David and other people. We've been doing various movies, TV shows, and so forth. And we're currently reviewing Stargate Universe, about to start season 2 of that. And we are about to start reviewing Battlestar Galactica, the 1978 series. So catch that coming up in the middle of 2026. But every now and then we do something a little bit different, and then I wanted to do the World Cup, and I had David handy to do it, and he was gracious enough to come aboard. So, David, let's look at 1994, where the U.S. is the host. What do you know, if anything, about how the U.S. got to be the host and why and how all that worked out? Because I will note we didn't even have the qualifications to be the host because it was a FIFA requirement that you had to have a domestic league, and we didn't even have MLS yet. It had gotten delayed a couple of years, and they went ahead and let the U.S. host it anyway. And I think they were fairly happy, the powers that be, with how it came out. But how did that come about, to your knowledge?
Okay, so the NASL, which was not FIFA associated, it was outside of FIFA's realm, but the NASL closed in '84. And so we are without a top flight outdoor professional men's league, and it would stay that way until 1996, which was the first season of competition for Major League Soccer. 1988, we make our sales pitch to FIFA. We want to host the World Cup, and we did not have a domestic league, so that's kind of working against us. What's working for us is the size of our market. FIFA wants to grow the sport everywhere. And there's this huge country with an enormous population that's a world leader that is an untapped market for soccer, basically. Yeah. They want to grow soccer in America. They want to do business with us. What are we bringing to the table? Well, what we promised them in 1988 was that you give us the World Cup, we will have a league. So this became an obligation. We had to be able to launch a top flight first division league in order to get this World Cup. So that was the deal, and they went with it. So we were awarded, I think it was '88 that we were given the '94 World Cup. So we knew, regardless of what happened in our qualification for 1990, we were going to be playing in that '94 World Cup because.
But that's one of the reasons why 90 we didn't touch on was so important, is that we knew we were going to host in 94. So we knew we would automatically qualify in 94, but it meant so much more to say that we got there on merit before that.
Yes, 100%. And it's good that we, that our players got blooded a little bit. They got a little bit of experience, a little bit of not that the rosters were exactly the same between the two tournaments, but there was a lot of overlap, and it's good to be able to get that experience in. But you're absolutely right. We can say that we earned our way to 1990, but here we are in 94. So you say that Major League Soccer had been delayed a little bit. I don't know the timeline here, except to say that Major League Soccer was officially incorporated in 1993. So they definitely existed as a legal entity before the 94 World Cup. But because of everything that's involved and how hard it is, they didn't start competitive play until 1996. But the existence of Major League Soccer, which is now in its 31st season, is the direct legacy of the 1994 World Cup. The 94 World Cup coming to America gave us Major League Soccer. It's still going strong 31 years later, and that's the best legacy that a World Cup. And that's the best case scenario. Why do you give a country a World Cup? To grow the sport. Guess what? The sport has grown here. So it's pretty amazing.
And come back. Yeah.
And so the other thing that happened in this World Cup cycle between 90 and 94 is ESPN got involved. And they knew we were going to be, they had 4 years to plan for the U.S. being in the World Cup. And they started carrying more U.S. matches, and they figured out how to carry them. So it was 92, 93 that we started getting soccer matches with no commercial breaks until halftime. So that's where it started. And that's why it started. And we're playing in Gold Cups. We're able to watch Gold Cup matches on TV, on ESPN. So you had a chance to follow the team and track the players from match to match, keep up with who you like, that kind of stuff. See the introduction of new players coming in, players like Kobe Jones and Alexi Lawless that were new to the scene. So by the time 94 arrives, if you've been a fan and you've been following the games, you've had a chance to follow the games because all their matches have been on ESPN. So for fans, now you're more familiar with them, and they figure out how to present the games on TV. And of course, the fact that we're hosting it, I mean, Sports Illustrated is getting involved. Good Morning America is getting involved. You're getting the media coverage everywhere. They're showing up on late night talk shows. And so this is a special time. By far the most important World Cup in our history because of the legacy and the impact it would have. And those guys, man, you look at that roster, you look at those lineups, these are the giants. These are the guys who built soccer in America in the 1990s. This is the Hall of Fame right here.
Yeah, we'll get to the U.S. team in just a second. I would point out we also had in 1994 what going for us was really the true evangelist of the sport for the masses in the U.S., Bob Lee, on ESPN. I will tell you right now, I knew virtually nothing about the World Cup coming out of 1990. I knew very little about it coming out of 1990. And I learned so much just listening to him and his commentary during the 94 World Cup. During the group stages, I was getting this soccer graduate degree in 1994 because I was learning about the teams. He would give you all this background. Like I remember when Bulgaria I think Bulgaria beat Germany in the group stage or something. Mm-hmm. And he's like, this isn't just one of the greatest moments in Bulgarian sports history. This is one of the greatest moments in Bulgaria's history as a nation, as a people, And I'm just like, wow, I'm learning all this. I didn't know that, I didn't know. So,
I love. Go ahead.
Bob Lee got the first golden jacket from the Men in Blazers for his contributions. He got the very first one, and it was well deserved.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He was the soccer guy at ESPN, and he did a lot to help just treat the sport with respect when everybody else was kind of dismissive of it. So right. that way he was a welcome voice for sure. And yeah, again, what's reinforced for me here in 94 is the pageantry and the celebration of all the countries of the world that you come together and play this sport that means so much to so many people, and to see people play aligned with the country they're from, and to see the different styles of play from different parts of the world, man, there's just nothing like it. It's all about the World Cup as far as I'm concerned.
I remember back at that time thinking exactly what you just said, that there's professional teams where the players come from wherever and you just hire the best players for your professional team regardless of country. So you might have a professional team in Italy that has players from England, Spain, and Mexico and Argentina, right? Mm-hmm. But the World Cup, they represent their home, where they're from. And I thought the only thing that would be comparable to this is that if in addition to college and NFL football, we had every 4 years we did a giant American football tournament where the players represented the states they went to high school, where they grew up. So like even if they went off to play for USC in college, right? Come back and play for Alabama or for Georgia in the state's cup. You know what I mean? That would be, and of course the southern states would dominate that.
Yeah, that would never happen because the northern states would never agree to that. But yeah,
California would have a little say in it, but otherwise it'd be the South. So, but yeah. So, and then the other thing was that we need to mention is that it was easy for the U.S. to make a bid like this. When Qatar or Saudi Arabia says we want to host the World Cup, they have to go on a giant building spree and build like 8 stadiums out in the middle of the desert. We had football stadiums already there. We did not have, and this is interesting, we didn't have the MLS stadiums. And one of the things I like about what MLS did, MLS was really the first attempt in American soccer to build new stadiums just for soccer. State-of-the-art new for the most part. Not all of them did, and not at first, but over those 3+ decades that you mentioned, we did that because rather than dropping a soccer team into the New York Giants stadium at the Meadowlands with 80,000 people, which they're not going to fill up unless you have to go to Pele. You build these 30, 40,000 seat soccer stadiums, which is more appropriate to the number of fans you're going to get. And it looks better to have a small stadium full than a huge stadium half empty, even if it's the same number of people. And we were so lucky when St. Louis got our team a couple of years ago, and they built we have the most beautiful little stadium for our MLS team in St. Louis I've ever seen. It is gorgeous. And it's nothing like a giant football stadium. And I mean that in a good way. It is in a very, it's what, like 30 or 40,000 seats probably, but it's state of the art, immaculate, and gorgeous. So that's one of the legacies too of the '94 World Cup and then MLS is that we got all these purpose-built soccer stadiums that are the right size all over the United States.
Yeah, I'll nitpick you a little bit on that. The soccer-specific stadiums that you see around the league, they're generally 20 to 25,000.
Okay.
But here's the thing. They're optimized for soccer. Like, they are built for soccer. And they usually have some kind of echo effect with the design of the partial roof to amplify that sound and get it right back down on the field. So when you're packed out, like you said, you could be in the Meadowlands in an 80,000-seat stadium that, by the way, you've had to pay rent to the venue for the right to play there, and you're not keeping the parking or the concession revenue. And you're going to draw 20,000 people, and it's going to look pathetic, and it's not going to play well on TV. Those same 20,000 people come into your stadium, and you're at 100% capacity. It looks a lot better. It sounds a lot better, and you're keeping the concession and parking revenue because you own it. You're not paying rent. You're keeping all the revenue. As a matter of fact, you can rent it out to other people if you want to. So that business model was key. That came around even though Columbus Crew was the first team to have its stadium, it came around 2001. It became the business model for the league around 2005, and it changed the fate of the league. And since 2005, 20 years ago, we've added 20 teams. So we've been expanding on average 1 club per year, and it's because of that change in that business model that helps us capture more of that match day revenue. In 1994, you're probably, even if we had Major League Soccer stadiums, you're probably not playing games there unless it's the group stage because they're only holding 20 or 20,000. You're going to draw more than that for the World Cup. Yes, to your point, originally, we already had the infrastructure to handle major events like this that countries like Qatar didn't have. They had to rush all their construction. We largely had everything in place: transportation, hotels, stadiums. But the stadiums were built for NFL. So a soccer pitch is bigger than an NFL field. It's 120 yards long instead of 100. But we have it because the end zones are 10 yards deep. The field's wider, but, you take away the sidelines. You can squeeze a soccer field into an NFL stadium, but it's not optimized. The distance from the front row of seats to the action is off. There's a gap there that doesn't have to be there. Where you put in teams, it's not ideal, but you can fit it in. So it worked. It totally worked, and it was a very successful tournament. The plot twist is FIFA didn't allow you to have artificial turf. You had to play on real grass. And some of these were indoor venues, such as where the U.S. started play at Pontiac Silverdome. And so what you saw was, and this was an impact and a legacy of the tournament, is innovations of how to bring in natural grass to an indoor stadium. And so we made that work. We had to comply by that rule, and we made it work. So, yeah, I thank you for bringing up the stadiums. I think that's a very interesting part of not only what was happening in the World Cup, but also the legacy going forward.
All right, we're going to get into what the U.S. team did and how the Cup itself went. But first, I want to look at personal stories. Let's talk a little bit about what we were doing at the time, how we watched it. I told you in 90, I didn't watch anything. I just saw a few highlights at the very end. How did you watch the 94 World Cup, and what are your memories of doing that?
I watched it live, and I was glued to my set, and I wasn't going to miss a minute of the U.S. in action. I was on board. I had the trading card set. I had the sticker book. I had the Sports Illustrated. I had the Soccer America issue. I was on board. If the Tony Mueller was on Tiger Beat, I probably had Tiger Beat. So I was ready to go. I attended a group stage match in Orlando that I believe was the second or third day of the tournament. And
we were both at the same one?
We were both at the Belgium-Morocco match in Orlando.
Belgium-Morocco.
Yeah.
Yep.
We didn't know each other then, but it turns out we were both there.
That's crazy.
But I have family in Central Florida, and so I had driven down earlier. And that I believe it was the day before the U.S. played Switzerland to open the tournament, and I watched that game there at my cousin's house in Florida. And spoiler alert, we tied Switzerland 1-1 thanks to an Eric Winalda free kick. And it was awesome. It was amazing. I'm excited. This is like the whole world has come to me. I've been a soccer freak. Now the whole country's going to be a soccer freak with me. And we just tied a game in the World Cup. This is amazing. I turn on the news, ready for some awesome World Cup coverage. And there's a white Bronco going slowly down the freeway.
No, that's right.
And I'm like, what is happening right now?
Yeah. And the NBA Finals, I think, were going at the same time, too.
And the NBA Finals, this was like the craziest sports day, like, ever. So
yeah, there's a 30 for 30 on that. The Chicago game between Germany and somebody, Mexico or somebody, and the low speed chase and the NBA. Yeah, I remember. I feel like I was at a outdoor event on a patio at a bar somewhere, and I remember seeing the split screen where they had the NBA Finals on one side and OJ and the Bronco on the other, and the World Cup wasn't even. It was like a distant third to that, unfortunately.
Yeah. It was like, come on, OJ, you couldn't have waited.
Terrible timing there. This is interesting. So I was, in 90 for the 90 World Cup, I was a senior at Auburn. In 94, that was the summer that I was finishing up graduate school at Auburn, getting my master's. And I was also the editorial page editor of the Auburn Plainsman newspaper. And so I was watching all this on television, watching the first few matches, and I decided randomly, and I look back now, I don't quite remember how this played out. This was when I decided Italy was going to be my other team, right? I always said in college sports, I only have one team and I hate everybody else. That's how you're supposed to. But in soccer, I have like 5 or 6 teams that I rank. Okay, and we'll get to that as this show goes along. But Italy became my team after the U.S. for a while. Now it's Scotland. Italy's kind of dropped down a little bit. But anyway, so I decided I was going to follow Italy and see how they did. And this was when it looked like they weren't even going to make it out of the group stage. So I wasn't like picking the front runner and going with them like Brazil. I was picking a team I was kind of rooting for that almost. In fact, for Italy to get out of the group stage, they needed their match to end a certain way, and they needed the other match in that group to end a certain way, and they both did. And in fact, I was on the subway in Washington, D.C. Let me back up. So I decided I'm going to follow Italy. Italy plays Mexico as their third match. They had Ireland in the first match in that big immigrant extravaganza in New York City. The Italians and the Irish in New York City was just incredible. Incredible, right?
It's awesome.
And Ireland upset Italy because Italy always starts slow in the World Cup when they qualify. But Italy was kind of on their back foot. I remember this clearly. I watched their second match, and their goalkeeper, Gianluca Pagliuca, famous name, right? he got a red card for touching the ball outside the box. So Italy had to beat Norway a man down, swapping out their backup goalkeeper, and they took they may have taken Roberto Baggio off, and they still held on and won. So they beat Norway. So they had a loss, and they had a win, and they had to tie. They had to at least tie Mexico, and they actually needed a 0-0 tie between Ireland and Norway to go through the next round. And so I went to the match, and they tied Mexico 1-1. I was at it. This was in RFK, the old RFK Stadium where the Redskins used to play in D.C. I went to that game. I watched it. I had my Italy jersey on. I marched around cheering the Italian songs and everything. It was fantastic. And then we were on the subway leaving RFK Stadium. I was heading back to the airport, and all of a sudden they say 0-0, 0-0, Norway, Ireland, and everybody just goes bananas because that meant Italy was going to go through to the second round. Well, I get back to Auburn, and I'm like, well, I don't want to stop now. They're going to play Nigeria in Foxborough, Massachusetts, in the New England Patriots Stadium. So I'm just spending money I don't have at this point because I'm a poor student. And I flew up. I wrote two articles about it in the Plainsman. But I flew up to Boston and took the bus out to Foxborough and saw an amazing match real quick. Nigeria scored early, and their little tiny section of the Patriot Stadium was just screaming and hollering and playing the drums doom, 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 for the whole match. And it's 1-0 Nigeria. 1-0 Nigeria, the whole match. And every rest of the stadium is just like it's dead. And then with like a minute to go in the match, I think it was Roberto Baggio scored to tie it up, and the whole place erupted. And then I believe they scored in extra time and won 2-1, and they go through, and they ended up making it all the way to the finals to play Brazil. All right. So this World Cup is going to end. We're going to talk about the U.S. in just a second, but this World Cup, which had some really amazing moments like Bulgaria beating Germany, which was huge.
Yes. That was such a fantastic match. That was probably my favorite match of the whole tournament. That was so fun to watch.
I think my favorite was Romania-Sweden.
I remember that one too. That was very good.
Some really cool. Yeah, Romania kind of came out of nowhere. I remember they called the Romanian striker the Pele of the Carpathians, which is such a great nickname. But all these teams eventually fall by the wayside, and it comes down to Italy and Brazil, which is like, that's two big boys in the final. And it was another low-scoring deal. And actually, the first World Cup final, it came to penalty kicks at the end. They went through overtime. I won't say overtime. They went through extra time and everything. And in penalty kicks, of course, famously, Baggio kicks the ball over the crossbar, and Brazil wins. But we're going to talk about how Brazil got there because they had to go through the U.S., and it was not as easy as you would have thought for Brazil to get past the U.S. So any thoughts from you other than the U.S. about this World Cup before we talk about the U.S. and how they did?
This is probably the World Cup that I paid the most attention to matches that did not involve the United States, because I remember the cast of characters very well. It all seems very colorful and larger than life in my memory. Yes, I remember Roberto Baggio. He just seemed like he was at an elite level. Brazil had Romario and Bebeto playing. This was the tournament that had Carlos Valderrama for Colombia with the giant orange afro.
We're about to get to that.
And he would also do this later in Major League Soccer, but it's like he didn't run. He just kind of walked. He probably never left like a 15-foot radius, but every single pass would just split the defense open. He was the perfect passer. He didn't have to run anywhere. I loved his kind of like laid back precision style. And then you had Jorge Campos, their goalkeeper for Mexico, who just like, you never knew when he was just going to start dribbling up the field for 90 yards. And he was like 5 feet tall, but he could save anything anywhere in that goal. He was
the famous Mexican announcer. I remember when Campos would come like up to the midfield and do something and almost give up a goal. I remember him going, he goes, Campos, Jorge. So good. You have him saying that about your name, you know you did something bad.
This was Jurgen Klinsmann, right, playing for Germany. You had Marco Echeverri playing for Bolivia. Now, I didn't know who Marco Echeverri was, except I remember he got a red card at Bolivia's first match, and it was like this big deal, and I could tell that the whole reaction of it was like, this must be awful. I would later learn about Marco Echeverri because these are all names, Valderrama, Campos, and Echeverri, that would be charter players in Major League Soccer just a couple years later. And Echeverri proved to be one of the standout players who played for DC United. But I always, I never forgot that, like, oh yeah, he's the guy I saw for Bolivia in 1994. So to see all these characters across the field was awesome. And the two matches we've mentioned are probably the two most entertaining that stand out for me for being the most entertaining. Bulgaria versus Germany, Romania versus Sweden. They were just fun matches. They had that wide open action that we always want to see. And so those are my memories outside of the US. And going to the Orlando match. You went to several. I just went to the one. This was back when real people could afford tickets to the World Cup. I don't think we're going to be able to do that in 26.
But that says it all. I was a poor college student, and I was able to go to 3. And this year, I have nice, decent income, grown person, and I don't think I can go to any. And it's not just because that; it's also because they're not doing a Chicago match this year. It's like every venue in the United States for 2026 is around the perimeter.
Except for Kansas City,
except for Kansas City is the only venue inside the interior of the country. And that's still 3 hours away, but about the same as Chicago. But I don't want to drive all the way out to Kansas City, and I don't even know who's going to be playing there. So it's unfortunate, but I don't think I'm really going to be going to any after waiting 30 years.
And I went to Belgium, Morocco, and keep in mind, I'd never been to a professional soccer match before. So this was brand new for me. Walk into that stadium, and the field is immaculate, and it's marked out for soccer, and the crowd is huge, and there's excitement in the air. For this to happen for soccer was completely new for me because my only experience was that it was some fringe sport that I got made fun of for liking. And I played in high school, but it was on a track on the interior of the track and field area that like nobody came to watch us play. And it's like, and to see it at this level and presented in such a grand way, just seeing the field and being in the stadium was a whole new world for me. The only memory I have was, like, believe it or not, there was this drunk Irish guy,
Get out of town. Drunk Irish guy, no way.
And he said something he shouldn't have to a bunch of Germans, and there was like this circle of Germans that were saying some kind of war chant coming at him like this.
Oh, Lord.
And I was like, I'm about to see a fight. This is going to get nasty.
You about to see what would have happened if Ireland hadn't been neutral in World War II.
I was like, I don't think I need to be here right now. I'm going to go.
Dude, wow.
Yay, Morocco.
I was going to say there's my two memories on that trip to Orlando. It was funny. It's like my roommate Dennis and I, we just got up one morning and we said, there's a soccer game this afternoon in Orlando. Dennis is like, you want to go? I'm like, go. And he's like, yeah, let's run down there. I had an Argentina like souvenir jersey. It wasn't even like a nice one. It was just one of those fake ones you get for $20 in the mall or something. And he had a Germany one. He was a big Germany fan because he had worked been in the army serving in a U.S. base in Germany. So he put his Germany jersey on. I put my Argentina jersey on, and we drove down there. And it was always so funny because he put on a Germany jersey. I put on Argentina. He looks at me and goes, "What's the difference?" I'm like, yeah, fair. So we're walking to the stadium. We're walking to that stadium in Orlando where I had been. I've actually been at that stadium many times because the Citrus Bowl and the Capital One Bowl is there. The bowl that Auburn seems to get into a lot back in the day. And I remember all these guys in Brazil jerseys were sitting like lying on the concrete outside the stadium waiting for it to open or something. And they're all just lying there like they're dead or asleep. And as I'm walking by, one of them looks up at me and goes, "Argentina." And I'm like, oh God, he's going to murder me. And I'm not even really a big fan, Argentina was my third team after Italy and after U.S. and Italy. So Yeah. Oh, and the other thing was, I remember, no offense to our Belgian and Moroccan viewers and listeners, but I remember the Belgians in the stadium were like big sweaty dudes, right? That didn't look very comfortable in South Florida in July or June or whenever it was.
Yeah.
And the Moroccans, man, there was a Moroccan lady with big foofy hair and a Moroccan flag tied around her waist like she's wearing a bikini with a flag. And I'm like, I'm not going to be from Morocco. From Morocco here. And isn't it funny, by the way, that Morocco had a really good run? They actually, was it the last World Cup that they ended up being the third or fourth place?
Yeah, I think they're the team that beat Argentina in the first game of the tournament, right? I'm thinking of the right team.
I know that. Yeah, we'll get to that one obviously down the road, but I just remember Morocco either two World Cups ago or last World Cup. Yeah, Morocco was like the surprise team of the tournament. They almost got to the finals. So yeah. All right, let's look at how the U.S. did. We talked about the rest of the World Cup in '94. Let's wrap up with our extended look at the U.S. So, as you said, June 18th, we played Switzerland in the Silver Dome, which is not a dome. It's not like the one in Phoenix where they can roll the grass field out into the parking lot to get rained on and sun. So from everything I've heard, it was just like a humid sweat box inside that stadium.
Yeah, I haven't really heard anything along those lines. I just know they did it. They pulled it off. They got the grass in there in time, and I can't imagine that it could have been a good surface. I mean, you're not going to have it very well rooted. I don't remember the details of like what the footing was like or anything, but I just can't imagine that it was it could have been very good. I mean, because you can't keep it in there too long. It's going to die. It's indoors. You put it in there too late, then it's all just pieces of sod. So I don't know. It was a challenge. I do know that just the fact that they could pull it off in this tournament at various locations was an achievement. It was looked at as this amazing American thing that we can pull this off. But I don't know what it was like in the stadium. All I remember about that match is Eric Winalda hitting that free kick and me going nuts. And then us having to give up the equalizer to whatever his name was, Elaine something. So that was frustrating.
U.S. scored first. I couldn't remember. I guess so. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So here was the thing: was that we knew in our group that we had Switzerland, who was all right. Let me put it this way, because this is kind of a running theme for the U.S. in the World Cup. We usually end up with one tough team and then two teams that we're like, it could go either way. And so we're like, we're probably going to lose the tough team. We need to get a result off at least one of the other teams. And then we always end up beating the tough team. That's what's so crazy. Yeah. It's so weird. Or tying them at least, with exception of Germany one year. But anyway, we're going to get to that later. But so we knew we had Colombia, and Pele himself had predicted that Colombia was his favorite to win the whole thing. With
Colombia. Yes, let me just say that Colombia was one of the tournament favorites going in. This was Colombia at its peak of its footballing prowess. Don't know necessarily if they got there in the most legitimate of ways, but yeah, they were a very, very strong team, and people were expecting a lot from them going into this, and they were in our group.
And that was the team, as you mentioned. You had Carlos Valderrama, who was he would, like you said, he would kind of stand in the middle of the field and then distribute. He was very much like a Joe Montana, where he would just sit back there in the pocket and look for open guys to get the ball to, and and he was very effective at that. And so we knew they were coming up as our second opponent. And Romania, I don't think we knew it at the time, but Romania turns out to be one of the dark horses of this tournament too, and gets pretty far. So we really needed to get at least a point off of Switzerland, or we weren't going to make it through. And we need to say this too, because we haven't said this. The goal was to get to 1990 World Cup. For 94, when you're the host, it was like every team that had ever hosted got to the second round. So our minimum requirement going into this World Cup was we've got to get to the second round. We've got to finish first or second, or maybe the best third or whatever in our group. That was our thing.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that for a second, because that's an excellent point. Not only that, but I mean, not only had host teams traditionally gotten out of group, you have multiple examples of host teams winning the whole tournament. And
Right.
so there's this history of host teams do well. And we were automatically qualified. So for us to prove that we had the merit to really be there,
Right.
we also had to get out of group for that reason, to show that we're not just here because we were gifted a spot as the host, but we're good enough to get out of group, which, considering our footballing history, was an enormous bar to clear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so there were a lot of reasons that we really needed to beat Switzerland, and we ended up tying them. And it was like, well, thank goodness we got a point, but only getting 1 point off Switzerland was we thought we were going to look back at that and say that's where we messed up, right? Because now we're going to have to beat Romania, because we're probably going to lose to Colombia, and we're going to need to get out of the group with 4 points by beating Romania. Spoiler, we're not going to beat Romania. We're not even going to tie Romania. So it's all going to come down to the Pele's favorite for the tournament, Colombia. And so on June 22nd, the U.S. plays Colombia. I don't remember where they played this match. The first one, as you said, was in Detroit. I wanted to say this was in L.A., but I'm not 100% sure.
I didn't look that up, but I think you're right. It feels like it was
feels like it was in
California,
in the Olympic Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we get one goal on merit. I think it was Ernie Stewart.
Yes,
and then the other goal. How do you want to? And then they got one later to come back to 2-1. But we win the game. We win the match 2-1. This was one of the biggest upsets in the World Cup. We defeat Colombia 2-1, and they're not going to advance because of this. They don't get out of the group. But tell us about that other goal we scored. I'll let you do the honors if you like.
Well, there's this thing called an own goal in soccer, and that is when you accidentally score a goal for your opponent. And so that's what happened. Colombia had a defender named Escobar who played the ball back.
I've heard that name before, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a name that you hear a lot in Colombia back in those days, especially. Anyway, Escobar, he scored an own goal, gave us what would prove to be the difference in the match. And so because of his mistake, Colombia is eliminated at the group stage. This is Colombia tournament favorites. Probably their peak as a soccer, still remaining the peak of them as a soccer nation. Huge things expected, and this guy's mistake eliminated them at the group stage. And there's a tragedy that follows this. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was saying, and put us through. I mean,
put us through. Put us through. Yeah, because that's how the math worked. We had 8 groups of 4 in a field of 32. No, I guess there must have been. Was there 6 24? Groups of 4? I guess because we had a field of 24 still in 24 in 1994. And the way the math works is if you win one and draw one, you're probably going through. And we're coming into this game needing a win, like you said, against one of the favorites of the tournament. And it's just not like looking like very likely at all. This own goal would tragically cost Escobar his life. He was back in Colombia. Colombia was ruled by the cartels, and you had the drug lord also by the name of Escobar. You may have heard of him. And it had him taken out. The cartel was, I believe, largely paying these players. There's a lot of shady stuff going on in Colombia soccer. But that mistake, scoring that own goal that put the U.S. through, that we're so thrilled about, it cost that guy his life. And
yeah, he stopped at like a traffic light or something, and a guy walked up and said, "Nice auto goal," and shot him.
So, you have, as a sports fan, you have to separate the fate of your team in the tournament from crimes going on in South America. I mean, it's not our fault that that's how things were in Colombia. Are we excited we won? Are we happy we got that own goal? Are now we're advancing into the group stage? This is everything to us. No one wants to see this guy have to pay for it with his life. It's just a horrible thing that happened. And there's a 30 for 30 on this. I think it's called the 2 Escobars, and it's all about what happened in this match against the United States and what happened after that in Colombia. It's a horrible thing. At the same time, it sent us through to new heights as a soccer nation.
I've got the results from our group, and indeed we were right. It was in the U.S. Romania, both the U.S. Romania and the U.S. Colombia were in the Rose Bowl.
That sounds right. Yeah.
The weird thing, Romania won the group with 2 wins and a loss. Romania beat Colombia 3-1 in the first match. So Colombia came into our match with their backs against the wall. They were not taking us lightly. They needed a win, and they still couldn't do it. To me, I didn't realize that, but that says even more about our win, that it wasn't like in the first game and nobody really knew. They already had a loss, and Colombia needed to be playing at their top, and they couldn't. Now, here's the crazy thing. Romania wins the group, but Switzerland beat Romania at the same time we were beating Colombia 4-1. How in the world? A team that we tied 1-1 turns around and beats Romania. And then Romania beat us 1-0 in the last match, and Colombia salvages a 2-0 win over Switzerland. So our group ends up, Romania wins the group, Switzerland in second with 1-1-1, but they advance on goal differential. And the U.S. is one of the best third-place teams. And, in fact, I looked up the third-place teams, and the U.S. was the third-best third-place team after Argentina, Belgium, the U.S., and then Italy got the last spot. To get through to the second round, Italy got the last chance. There was, after them, we didn't get through, and they go all the way to the final and take the final to penalty kicks. It's so weird how soccer works sometimes, But okay, the last
one thing I remember about that. One more note about that Colombia match. Marcelo Balboa, our defender, came within inches of the most glorious bicycle kick you could possibly conceive of. It was so beautiful. He was just off by just a little bit. It was a perfectly timed and executed bike. Oh, man.
It was
so good. I get goosebumps just thinking about how close that goal came. If that had gone in, man, it'd have been the highlight of the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. Missed the post, I think, by like an inch on the side. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to say about this World Cup, and we can kind of wrap it up, is we haven't talked about the Brazil match. We'll get to that in just a second. But also, I want to talk for a second about our manager for this World Cup. We went and got the Costa Rica manager, who was like Yugoslavian, I believe, Bora Mila. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
He was Serbian, yeah.
Yeah. And he was a character.
Yeah,
Bora was he was a defensive mastermind, and he said that what we needed to do to get to the second round of this tournament was just play great defense, be very opportunistic with goals if they came around, but we were just going to be a lockdown defensive team and kind of grind our way to the second round. And with a little help, that's kind of what we did. And the other thing I loved about Bora is he was famous for he would leave the sideline and go in the locker room before the first half was over and start writing stuff on the chalkboard so that when the players came in, he already had a bunch of stuff up there he wanted to talk about. I guess he knew soccer, right? Nothing's going to happen. I ain't going to miss nothing. I just love that about him. What are your memories about Bora, if any?
Bora, when I think of Bora, I think of the sunglasses and the smile. He was just a charismatic character that the camera loved. He was known for taking 5 different teams to 5 consecutive World Cups. So that's a record. He did Mexico in 86. It was Costa Rica, us in 94. I think it was Nigeria in 98 and China in 02. And also taking these teams typically further than they'd ever been before. So he was a big hire for us. And he was tough. He was tough on the team and brought a level of professional standard I don't think that our guys necessarily had been used to before then. Keep in mind, still in 94, MLS doesn't exist. Most of our guys are playing second, third division in America, or they're playing second division in Europe somewhere. I think John Harkes had made it into the English first division. This is prior to the Premier League existing. I think Harkes after 1990 had made it with Sheffield Wednesday, but that was about it. So not a lot of club pedigree on this roster still. And Bora was able to bring a lot of professional standard, I think, to the training and everything like that. he kind of focused on psychology a lot. He wanted teams. He wanted us to have confident. He wanted to play with confidence, but also to be able to handle adversity. So he focused on that sort of thing, and it was a winning formula. I mean, it got us through, and he had success with those other countries too. So, just saying the name Bora makes me smile because I just think about like he was just kind of a character on the sidelines.
He was. All right. So the last thing is the U.S. does get to the second round. We're going to play Brazil, of course. We can't catch a break and get somebody beatable, really. And we end up in the Rose Bowl on July 4th. So everything that could possibly go our way, except for playing Brazil, goes our way. And we hold them to a 1-0. I think Romario scored the game winner. But we really did pretty darn well. I don't think we had anything to feel ashamed of.
No, we played well. We held with them. It was a fantastic moment in America. I mean, this is a high-profile match. This was it had the nation's attention, and it was packed out there. So it was 4th of July, so everybody's home watching it. It was a great moment just in America. This is what we want out of this World Cup. We've made it to the group stage. We're playing the best team, typically one of the best teams in the whole world ever. And playing on the 4th of July, and our team's doing great and all that kind of stuff. So it was a whole lot of fun. Brazil cracked Tab Ramos's skull open. They got a red card. He gets, carried out on a stretcher, not knowing if he's ever going to play again. I mean, it was horrible.
Right. It was.
I had friends coming to me later mad at me that we couldn't score against a short-handed team because Brazil already had the lead. It was 1-0, and they were down to 10 men. These are guys that don't really understand soccer. I'm like, look, if you've got the lead, you don't need that striker up top. You take him off the field. Whoever got ejected, you make a substitution, so you're playing without a striker, and you can play defense for the rest of the match. It's kind of easy to play a man down if you already have the lead. And of course, still a lot of education on the sport and the tactics of the sport that need to take place here in '94, at least among my friends, because they were giving me a hard time about it. But for us to be able to not get embarrassed against Brazil, we're still young. Go ahead.
This was arguably the best defensive Brazil team ever, as far as I can remember, because most Brazil teams are built around offense and attacking and being all fancy and spectacular to watch. But this, I believe their coach was Pereira, and this Brazil team was. I remember the Brazilian fans, because Brazilian soccer fans in some ways are like Alabama football fans. They don't just expect to win all the time, but they critique even how it happens when they do, if it's not good enough. You know what I mean? That's how spoiled they are.
Right.
And so Brazilian fans were like, well, yeah, they're winning the World Cup, but they're not like doing spectacular fun play. They look like a European team. They're playing defense. What is this? But beating the United States, as you said, they had to do that. They played a really great defensive second half match to shut down any offense we had and grind out that win. And that was what worked. You notice they didn't bring him back in '98, the Pereira. He went off to coach some other team because he just, again, it's like Lou Holtz used to say it when he was at Notre Dame. He said, well, we would lose, and they say, we want you to win. So then I would win, and they'd say, well, you're not winning by enough, and then we win by more. Well, you need to look good while you're doing it, so it's always, they had that kind of expectations. It wasn't enough just to win. So but this is Brazil's fifth.
It's not enough to win. You have to win and look good, and you're not looking good. So why aren't you playing in that samba style? We want to see flash. We want to see it fancy. A pragmatic win is not good enough for the Brazilian fans, at least not back then. So yeah, you're exactly right. It's like, yeah, you're winning, but we're bored. You need to win in a different way. Like, give me a break. We're winning.
Romario and Bebeto were like the two least exciting offensive players that have ever been the featured players, right? And I think Romario got the golden boot or whatever. He didn't get the most goals, but he was the man of the tournament.
Right.
And everybody's like, he was okay. I mean, he was on the winning team and he scored the most goals for him. So, okay. But you know, he was the least exciting of the Brazilian strikers probably ever.
Sure.
This was a defensive team.
This is before the days of Ronaldo or Ronaldinho. So
all of those guys.
Yeah.
So.
I believe it was Hristo Stoichkov that got the golden boot. He's playing for Bulgaria. He would go on to play in Major League Soccer.
He looked like he was about 45 and like he basically smoked a pack of cigarettes a day his entire life. But he could kick the dang ball in the goal, man.
He's out there like a dad bod just barreling through people.
That's so great. But the other thing I'll point out is that we always end up finishing second or worse in our group, and so we always get a tough second round opponent. That's the problem. If we could ever win our dang group, and by the way, in 2026, if there's ever been a time,
right,
you know, there's no Germany, there's no Argentina, there's no England. We're in 2026. If our team can just halfway play good, we could win that group and not have to play freaking Brazil or Germany in the second round. Wouldn't that be a breath of fresh air if we could get the upstart in the second round? You know,
now I think we did win our group in 2010 above England, but to your point, 2026, this is the most favorable group we've ever had. So,
yes,
despite our recent performances, we should still. I still look at us to do okay in our group this year. We should.
Yeah. So. All right, that's going to wrap up our first episode, talking about 1990 and 1994. And join us next time. We will look at 1998, the American fiasco, as Roger Bennett famously called it. And then 2002, which is anything but, where we'll say, if we could have just skipped 98, we'd have had a nice progression going there. But we have a dip, so we'll get into that one. David, appreciate you coming on, and we will see you on our next episode.
Thank you very much. My YouTube channel is American Soccer Quick Kicks, and this is what I talk about all the time. I kind of talk about Major League Soccer. I don't get into the weeds of like weekly league results, but I talk about all the various competitions that they're in. And of course, I major on the U.S. men's soccer team, and we're going to be tracking them through the World Cup. You can go back on my feed now and see reactions to the World Cup draw that we did back in December, I think. And then also my most recent video is about our recent friendlies against Belgium and Portugal. So you can go check those out.
Very nice. All right. And I'm the host of the co-host of AU Wishbone, talking about college football, Auburn sports. But that's not interesting to you here. So we will see you guys in our next episode.
Awesome, man. Thanks.